What's up? Say what's up as you come in. Hit that like button for me. Say where you are watching from. Make sure that you share your opinion in the chat. It does a ton for the algorithm. We appreciate you. Welcome to the daily live stream. Saturday, late night live stream, and I did that on purpose. It was a pretty busy day for me and my wife this Saturday. So like I say, I go live every single day except Sunday unless life happens. Which life happens often, but I make sure that I come to you guys every single day. If not, I'll come more than once a day. So I appreciate everybody that stopped by today. I got a couple of news clips for us to jump into, so let's get right into it. Alright, so some of it I have kind of like the same title because I'm going to replay a couple of clips that we played the night prior, just because I might not have gotten a lot of people's attention with them, or whoever was on the live stream at the time, maybe they didn't get a chance to see what we were watching because we were just kind of like storming through. So we got the Texas teen clashes with the Dems over God. That was a really good one. I thought that I think his last name is Mr. Hunter Lopez, 16-year-old kid. I think he did a really great job, like pretty informed. I think he held his ground well. I think it was Mr. Congressman Raskins who he was speaking to regarding the Declaration of Independence and God and things of that nature. And I thought he did a pretty decent job. And then we got, Chud, the weirdo. He finally got arrested. And now he's being charged with attempted murder. So other than some of the first clips that exposed him being arrested, I'll show some of the newer ones. We got Bill O'Reilly and a couple others chiming in on China talks and also things going on with Iran. So I wanted to bring the night news to you guys. Night news talks. We always have fun. So let's go ahead and jump right into the first clip. And then also I have other clips that I'll be playing, but they're not a part of the title. So in that case, all you guys have to do is just kind of like stick around. There's certain ones I have like involving redistricting. Zoran says Iran war speaks to a broken kind of politics. Like just a couple of different news. Something about by Pastor Rod, what do the scriptures say? We got Valhalla TV talking about Ben Shapiro crashing out, lost Hantavirus vials trigger security concerns. I wanted to watch some of that. So yeah, we are going to just jump right into the live stream. Gavin Newsom talking about some things that he's never seen in his lifetime. So yeah, a couple of good things up for grabs tonight. I actually want to jump right into the lost Hantavirus vials trigger security concerns, and then we're going to kind of go in order from there. So shout out to you guys. Let's jump right in.
Have taken all the vaccines I took, so
my fault.
It was a pleasure to speak to you again. And what I would like to start with is we did a show on hantavirus last week, and you explained it probably better than anyone, and a lot of people appreciated it. So I thought we'll do an update now. The World Health Organization has reported 11 total cases so far. It's 3 deaths. And they're across, the cases have been across multiple countries, mainly in Europe. Actually, all of them in Europe, I think. Netherlands, Spain, France, UK, US, Germany, I think Australia as well. The CDC in the US is monitoring 41 potentially exposed people. And there's some passengers that were placed in quarantine facilities. Now, you've explained, and obviously the monitoring period is 42 days because that's the incubation period. Now, you've explained last time about what hantavirus is and how it spreads through rodent feces, and but there is a possibility, and this strain itself does spread from human to human contact, significant contact. But what I would love you to do is maybe give us again an overview for anyone that hasn't.
I think so. The rodents part of this, the only reason why I can talk to it is because this is where, my wife kind of made it apparent to me that that was one route of travel. This young gentleman is talking about the human to human contact, which a lot of members from the CDC or even from the WHO, they said they weren't too worried about the human to human contact, that it would become more of a concern to them if it became airborne, right? So that's more about what we dealt with COVID. And they're saying that right now, as long as it's not airborne, like as long as it's not as transmissible as COVID was, they're not very concerned about it. I mean, I don't know how I feel about that. First it's, it's not that serious unless there's prolonged human to human contact. Next thing you know, all you have to do is be next to each other for 3 minutes. Like it's always something like this, because I can remember when COVID started out like this and they couldn't really figure out how it was being transferred from person to person.
See in our last episode, what is hantavirus? Why people are concerned? I know it's not a pandemic and highly unlikely it will be a pandemic. Betting platforms put a 9-10% chance it will be labeled as a pandemic. So highly unlikely. But why this one is concerning and why this one is spreading from human to human contact, and that small probability of it spreading or becoming a pandemic, what would that look like? Not to fearmonger, but kind of look at the worst case scenario, which is an unlikely scenario. So I hope I set the framework of the first topic of discussion.
Right. So hantavirus is a negative stranded RNA virus. It is multi-segmented. So in a sense, it's a little bit like influenza, which is also a segmented RNA virus. There are many, many subtypes of hantavirus. You're aware that, for instance, because it's been in the news, that Moderna is developing an mRNA vaccine for a hantavirus in partnership with some people in South Korea, because there is a South Korean hantavirus. The hantaviruses generally fall into two categories. There's the New World and the Old World being Europe, basically, and on that side of the Atlantic. The Old World hantaviruses generally, as a group, have a different profile of disease than the New World hantaviruses, in that they cause more of a kidney syndrome. And the New World viruses cause more of a cardiovascular syndrome. So what kills you is problems with your heart and lungs in the New World. The particular hantavirus in question here is called Andes. It's a subtype. It's associated with exposure in South America. Particular hantavirus in question here is called Andes. It's a subtype.
Okay, so Andes is the subtype. The funny thing is that Andes is actually the one that they are in fear will travel a lot faster. So I guess this is pretty similar to COVID in the sense where there's a couple of different strands, and they're saying that they feel like Andes is the one that will travel the fastest.
Associated with exposure in South America. And you'll recall the context here is that a cruise ship, calling it a cruise ship is a little bit misleading. It was one of these cruise ships that was more of an activist explorer type operation. So not a great big, huge, multi-layered Dutch cruise ship like Disney or any of the big cruise lines do, but a smaller ship. And in it were people from all over the world, as you're noting, and these are generally older folks, and they are generally wealthier.
You know why this doorbell went viral? Because it's actually plug and play. No Wi-Fi, no.
So they're off on an expedition, and among other things, they're doing bird watching. And it's claimed that the two index cases, the people that first came down or appeared to have the earliest cases, were involved in a bird watching episode in which they traveled to a landfill. And that was the original explanation, was that they had picked up hantavirus in this landfill and then brought it back onto the cruise ship. Now what we have is a evidence of a fairly widespread exposure on the cruise ship. That is not consistent with the usual pattern of infection in human-to-human transmission of Andes hantavirus. Most hantaviruses are not associated with human-to-human transmission. Andes is, but at a low frequency, low probability event, typically involving very close contact or exchange of body fluids. You can translate that however you wish. We're talking about elderly folks.
I don't like that. Like when Dr. Robert Malone says you could translate that however you wish, it's kind of like, okay, Dr. Malone, since when is translation up for grabs? Either you tell us what it means or you don't understand what it means. So that's where it's kind of alarming to me to hear that. But again, like he's talking about how bad the transmission is amongst people who are older at this point.
So they're off on an expedition. Generally older folks. And they are generally huge, multi-layered Dutch cruise ship like Disney or any of the big cruise lines do, but a smaller ship. And in it were people from all over the world, as you're noting, and these are generally older folks. And they are generally wealthier. So they're off on an expedition. And among other things, they're doing bird watching. And it's claimed that the two index cases, the people that first came down or appeared to have the earliest cases, were involved in a bird watching episode in which they traveled to a landfill. And that was the original explanation, was that they had picked up hantavirus in this landfill and then brought it back onto the cruise ship. Now what we have is evidence of a fairly widespread exposure on the cruise ship. That is not consistent with the usual pattern of infection in human-to-human transmission of Andes hantavirus. Most hantaviruses are not associated with human-to-human transmission. Andes is, but at a low frequency, low probability event, typically involving very close contact or exchange of body fluids. You can translate that however you wish. We're talking about elderly folks. I don't think they're all having rampant rave parties on this particular boat. I have not heard anything that rules out that this boat was actually the source of the contamination. Now, cruise ships have a strong incentive to not allow speculation about practices on the boat being the source of the problem, whether it's norovirus or whatever. But often that's frequently the case. And when you see such a widespread pattern of infection, such a large number of cases, and this is a large number of cases of hantavirus infection, you have to rule out that there wasn't a rodent source on the boat itself. And that rodent source could well be involving some of the food stocks that were used. And it could be
I mean, so what Dr. Malone is saying here, it does make sense to me, right? Rule out that the cruise ship didn't have, a rodent itself. So in other words, right, were there any mice on the ship? Were there any cases of, I guess we could say, uncleanliness linked to the cruise ship or to that boat? Like, he's saying that the boat itself hasn't been ruled out as a source, right, of infection. So I think that that's a good point that he makes, because we haven't really heard anybody say anything like that, right? They've all kind of made it seem like all of these people were on a cruise ship and someone was somewhere and then all of a sudden there was an outbreak.
In the air handling or ventilation. So we can't rule out that this was a source of common contamination in the boat itself, because of course, historically, boats are prone to having infestations of rodents.
Dad, what do you actually do at work? Project management. Why? I'm doing a career thing for school.
And really, like, I would push back on what Dr. Malone was saying. If there haven't been scenarios where I've watched certain documentaries and we covered, fortunately, thank God, certain things on the channel where they talked about certain certain crews on ships going through and inspecting the ship before it's able to, take off from the dock or go on its travels. And they find different things, right? Whether it's in the boiler room, whether it's in the switch room, they find different things, especially as they go further and further underneath the ship. Like, we have actually heard these things on the channel, and I've seen them in documentaries I've watched. So yes, cruise ships and boats historically are sources of rodent infestation and things like that. So yeah, I think it's a good point that if they haven't ruled out the ship itself first, that it's safe to say that we could still keep that on the table. But instead, what do we hear in mainstream media? Oh, there were a couple of people that were somewhere. One person did this, another person sightseed, saw a bird, another person saw a weird rock, and then there was an infestation. This is kind of what we deal with when it comes to mainstream media.
So right now, what one would need to observe if this was a significant risk for an epidemic, a continuing infection pattern, is that you would see evidence of prolonged human-to-human transmission. So that would be revealed typically by case tracking, in which they would interview these patients and identify who their contacts were, and whether there was any evidence of close contact between the index cases and second-degree cases or third-degree cases. What you would want to see if this was an actual pandemic risk is that there was evidence that the index cases, the people that initially were infected, at least one of whom has died, were in contact with some other group of people in a close, fairly intimate way, and that those people then had
Happy Feet. Shout out to you, Happy Feet. Thanks for telling me about the echo. It's not something I can change right now. I have to distort the volume because we do long-standing watching over here. So because you do that, YouTube forces you to change the audio at some point, or they'll copyright me. So I'll make sure that I put the captions on for you. My bad about that.
Contact in a very close, intimate way with other people that subsequently became infected. You want to see that chain of contact, and you want to see human-to-human sustained transmission, if this is truly a risk for epidemic development. Now, there's a lot of talk about this having been an engineered pathogen. That's a lot of buzz among certain people on the internet.
Oh, really? I didn't see those rumors. But
what's the claim? And then I'll let you.
The claim is that it's very tenuous. The claim is that there are patents involving Hantavirus as a biowarfare threat and mitigating that, and some really kind of contrived logic that there is sequence evidence. The problem with that is that Tedros and the World Health Organization are not releasing the sequence. There are fragments of sequence that have been analyzed by Jessica Rose and others. And in their analysis, you must have Hantavirus.
I was going to make that joke. I want to interrupt. I was going to ask you, is the symptoms sneezing? But then I don't leave my studio, so I don't think I've not exchanged any fluids with anybody.
Okay.
And I've never seen a rat.
Yeah. So more likely you've got a cold. To the best of my knowledge, the full sequence of what has been obtained from the patients has not been released. And Tedros made this explicit statement relating to President Trump in the United States, saying that because they had withdrawn funding from the World Health Organization, the World Health Organization would not share these sequences with the United States. So therefore, people who claim that they have the sequences and they've analyzed the sequences, I find that pretty hard to believe because Tedros himself is saying that he's not sharing with the United States. I guarantee if it was publicly available in some way, the United States would already have it. So I think that the probability that this is an engineered pathogen is speculative at best. And based on Jessica's initial analysis, it tracks as the original identified ND strain.
Someone needed to create a path that would allow black musicians from all walks of life to share their God.
So, personally, I don't see that we have a significant risk here. We do have widespread distribution of a variety of fear narratives from international...
As you call fear porn.
Yep. And there is apparently thousands of articles that have been published over the last couple of weeks globally about how dangerous and fearful this particular virus is. And if you catch it and you get symptomatic, you have something like a 30 to 50% chance of dying if you have symptoms. Okay? But that is a low probability event. The risk in the United States of getting infected and having symptoms of hantavirus is 7 times lower than the risk of being struck by lightning. So that tells you something about the relative risk we're dealing with here. Now, all of this is subject to change should they do the epidemiologic tracing, as I was talking about, and find out that we have evidence of efficient, sustained human-to-human transmission. So far, nothing about that. What we do have is people that have been placed in quarantine, and that is not particularly unusual. That's standard practice for any novel infectious disease outbreak on a boat. And the quarantining in harbor, the refusal to allow the boat to dock and board, that's just good practice. Now, Mario, to put it in larger context, we also have a political thing going on here. And the political thing is that the World Health Organization is very much advocating that they get global buy-in for their role as the main coordinator for these international health regulations and by extension the pandemic health treaty that they have advocated for, which places the World Health Organization at the center of global planning and response. And the United States and Argentina, two of the nations that have citizens and are involved in this situation, both have opted out of those international health regulations and the WHO Pandemic Accord. And Tedros, the Director General of the World Health Organization, Tedros Ghebreyesus, I believe is how you pronounce his name, has made the case that this demonstrates conclusively that all nations of the world should join the World Health Organization. International health regulations should buy into that and should buy into their treaty that is contested. And many nations feel that it is a breach of national sovereignty. So it may be that all of this promoted fear that seems to be globally coordinated may reflect a political agenda of supporting the World Health Organization in its efforts to try to get global buy-in, or its agenda of the international health regulations and the pandemic treaty. And you'll note that we're seeing all kinds of narratives having to do with infectious disease getting amplified globally in a way that's quite striking and very disproportionate to the actual threat.
Could be just PTSD from COVID though, because then if that was before COVID, maybe it wouldn't get that attention. And it's about, like, for example, I'm doing this interview because a lot of people are interested to learn more. And obviously, I chose you to speak to because you're very pragmatic about these things. But that's because our last video got a lot of traction because everyone's just dying to know more now. Is that because of all the media coverage that we've seen?
I mean, I can't help but agree with him. I can't help but agree with him. I feel like it is PTSD from COVID, and I feel like we all kind of feel like that. Shout out to Valhalla TV. He said something that I was extremely worried about, because he said that he wasn't as worried about hantavirus as he was COVID, but he was worried about the hysteria around hantavirus. So he said, I'm just worried about what the mainstream media is going to do with it, and people being afraid of it because of what we've just experienced with COVID. And honestly, with that, I can agree with him, because I said, yeah, they're going to take advantage of the fact that people just lost their minds when it came to COVID. And yeah, there's going to be a little bit of hysteria around this.
And so maybe you're right, because the media coverage led to people interested to learn more, and that's doing the interview. I have another story. Now, it's resurfaced. It's a 2-year-old story, but they're getting a lot of traction now. I think 2 years, no, even more. A few years ago. In Australia, there were 323 vials of infectious virus samples went missing in Queensland in a health lab. Two vials were containing hantavirus, about 100 contained the Hantavirus, 223 contained the Lysal virus, which is like rabies from what I understand. So that was an event that happened a while ago. And I'd love to get your thoughts on that particular event with the limited information that I've shared. But more importantly, on the general risk of having a lab leak like we had with COVID. Because that's what I think just people have moved on from, and the what's the word? The research that led to the gain-of-function research. Gain-of-function research is ongoing in various areas of the world, from what I understand. And people have moved on from the risks involved. And now a lot of people are talking about using AI in that research. And rightly so, AI just allows us to advance a lot more. But when I speak to AI experts, I do a lot of these interviews, especially in times when there is no wars. I do a lot of these AI interviews, and the biggest worry, and I'm sure you've heard it, they have is that AI ends up...
Listen, what if you can start your own lending business, helping other businesses get access to capital?
Creating a strain of virus. That strand of virus that eventually ends up being spread like COVID, but is a lot more deadly. And that's a concern. They said, if we ever have a concern of artificial intelligence breaking out or getting out of control, that would be the scenario that worries us the most. Is a leak similar to what we saw in COVID. What's the word there? It's a biohazard leak, that's the word, a biohazard leak. So that's why I want to bring that story up from a few years ago that's gaining a lot of traction, but as part of a broader discussion of the risks of a lab leak. So the loss of those vials is absolutely a concern. And in the United States, in addition, we've had two instances of Chinese sponsored laboratories that were discovered, previously hidden, that did have a much broader range of pathogens, including Ebola and many other things, that were not known, were not licensed, were involved in, among other things, manufacturing COVID test kits, but appeared to have been doing surreptitious gain-of-function research themselves in domestic U.S. facilities that were hidden. So what you're illustrating is absolutely a global problem. And that is that there may be nefarious actors that are engaged in manipulating highly pathogenic agents or potentially distributing them that might create risk for all of us. I think that is a valid concern. And we have a structure in place historically that dates back to the, I think, early 70s, called the Biowarfare Convention, that is designed as a treaty structure to commit nation states to not engaging in biowarfare pathogen research. Unfortunately, it has absolutely no verification or enforcement capabilities. And it is written entirely around the idea that the bad actors would be nation states.
like, say, the old Soviet Union or the United States, because both were previously engaged in this kind of work. And the truth is that the modern day threat is exactly as you're describing it, whether it's artificial intelligence or other means, that you have a biohacker, garage biology, or other non-state actor engaged in engineering a pathogen for enhanced risk to humans. And that could involve the use of artificial intelligence as one way to be designing biologically engineered pathogens. That is absolutely a risk. And I've had the privilege of having been appointed by the U.S. government State Department to the commission that is responsible at the United Nations level for investigating events like this, biohazard events. That commission does recognize that this represents a significant risk. And in that context, I've participated in meetings at the United Nations that involved representatives from AI companies, such as Anthropic and Microsoft. And you are exactly right. The companies that are building tools to support genetic engineering research and development and application, pharmaceuticals and everything else, are very concerned about their tools being used by bad actors for nefarious purposes. And so they're trying to build in systems that would allow them to detect the use of those AI-driven tools in ways that would be consistent. Just like I'm sure you use, whatever your favorite AI is, whether it's Grok or Claude or whatever. And you'll notice that all the time you'll be using your AI if you're asking difficult questions, and suddenly it will give you a prompt that basically says, sorry, I'm not going to give you an answer to that question. I run into it fairly frequently with the things you ask it, Doctor. I'm sure it refuses most of your questions. So the point is that systems are in place now.
Let me tell you three reasons why you should buy frozen seafood on the internet. Number one, it's
every time this happens,
and they're not
AI,
perfect,
AI,
but they are being built and implemented. But that also demonstrates your point. That in fact this is a risk. So the theft of the vials is absolutely concerning. The existence of biolabs that are engaged in gain-of-function research is absolutely a concern. It is ongoing, and it is essentially unregulated globally. In the United States, we have a partial ban on gain-of-function research domestically that is funded by the U.S. government. But there is if you know Stat News, which is an industry trade publication based in Boston, they've openly described that Pfizer has gain-of-function research laboratories working on coronaviruses down in Texas.
I remember when it first leaked, I think it was James O'Keefe that leaked it a long time ago. It was massive news. Everyone was talking about it. But now everyone's accepted it and moved on. Human attention span is like the biggest danger to humanity. It's like we moved on from one of the biggest dangers to us as a species, which is insane to me. Like, COVID was a wake-up call, and then we forget a few years later.
So the good news is that it's been the experience historically in the biowarfare community that it is really difficult to engineer something that is more pathogenic and more infectious than what already exists.
But AI, though, it makes it easier. So that's
absolutely, it makes it easier, and that is a absolute risk, and that's what I'm agreeing with you, is that the risk is real, that the companies recognize that it's real, that the Biowarfare Convention treaty that exists is inadequate. It is inadequate capabilities for detecting breaches of that Biowarfare Convention. There are no enforcement capabilities within that biowarfare convention. It is basically a gentleman's agreement between nation states. And it has no capabilities for addressing non-state actors. President Trump has endorsed the concept of an international treaty banning gain-of-function research. But from my conversations with colleagues in the State Department, there's a huge gap between saying you want to do it in terms of an international treaty and actually implementing it. That is going to be on a good day, a decade long to get that done. And meanwhile, the technology is leaping ahead at an increasing pace. So I agree with you completely that there's risk here. And the risk primarily seems to reside in non-state actors. The technology is now such that people, relatively modestly trained individuals can acquire the tools and conditions to engineer biologic threat agents in small spaces in ways that would be very difficult to detect. And the technology is increasingly powerful to make those genetic modifications. So I agree with you that this is a risk area. If there's anything that the global community should come together around, it isn't necessarily the implementation of a pandemic treaty, in my opinion, that places the World Health Organization, which I believe is a compromised structure, and a long history of corruption there. I think that we as a community absolutely should come together and develop consensus and take action to make it clear that engaging in this type of gain-of-function research, which is otherwise known as dual-function research, meaning it can be used for both civilian and military purposes, is just not ethically acceptable. The risks far outweigh the benefits. But the problem, we have a culture of science that believes that they have the right and privilege to engage in these kinds of things, and that they know better than the rest of us.
There's always the concern as well if one country doesn't do it, the other country's doing it and has an edge. There's always that concern, which is similar to the nuclear weapons concern.
Precisely similar. It is absolutely the same thing as mutually assured destruction. And by the way, this is only one domain. The development of super soldiers is another one. The development of robotics and drones that are driven by AI and are fully autonomous.
Mario on different occasions, so I'll do my best to try to bring him to the channel for you guys more often. At this point, I wanted to go to something that Gavin Newsom actually talked about earlier today, which I literally thought it was hilarious. His press conferences. We got to start paying more attention to Gavin, just simply because midterms, things that are coming around the corner. Gavin is making a name for himself. He has been for some time, since he started his podcast, since President Trump and J.D. Vance took the last election. So I've been paying close attention to Gavin Newsom. He's doing decent with his podcast. I know exactly what he has in mind for 2028, and that's why I feel like right now he's like the top running Democratic presidential candidate for 2028. And nothing's been announced officially, but come on, I really feel like Gavin Newsom's going to be the guy. I can't think of anybody else on the Democratic side that's going to do it. Joshua 8 new international version AI destroyed. So yeah, shout out to Raphael Brown. Shout out to you, bro. But yeah, so I want to take a look at that first. But first, I want us to play that Texas team that clashed with Congressman Raskins. So they are talking about God. If you see it here, it says, watch Texas teen clashes with Dem Congressman at Capitol Hill hearing. Now, this is over just... He's talking about secular law, and this teenager brings up to him that foundationally the United States was not founded on secular law. I just thought this was hilarious how many times this young guy was able to put him in his place, and he did well with it. So shout out to him. Let's take a look.
You are right. Laptops used to have ports. Now they sell you the ports separately, but this laptop stand brings them all back. Just plug in one.
Seniors Day at Gold Gyms. But yesterday was a big day for a high schooler on Capitol Hill. A 16-year-old student from Texas testified before Congress
on why political Islam and the Constitution are incompatible. He went head-to-head with Democrat Congressman Jamie Raskin and did not back down.
Is there anybody on the panel who thinks that we need a special law addressing any particular religious population, whether it's the Muslim, the Christian, the Jewish, the Hindu, the Mormon, or what have you? Or are we just saying that everybody should be held to secular law in America?
Thank you, Congressman, for the question. I think that you keep referring to a secular law. I think it's important to point out, I believe it was 56 of the 57 Declaration of Independence signers were Bible-believing, faith, church-attending Christians. I believe it was the first original 13 colonies that required a declaration of faith. So I'm not acknowledging that.
Well, wait a second. Now, you're traversing my territory now, Mr. Hunter Lopez. You brought it up. Are you aware that the Constitution of the United States does not establish a religion? It forbids the establishment of religion. Are you aware that it doesn't mention God?
So the Declaration of Independence mentions God 4 times.
And he was just getting started.
It's precisely why Jefferson wrote
You need to acknowledge our Christian heritage in America. That's what I'm trying to do.
You can acknowledge whatever heritage you want, but you can't impose an establishment of religion on other people. That's the
I'm not suggesting that at all. I'm just saying we need to acknowledge our heritage. That's what I'm saying.
Everybody can acknowledge their own heritage. Do you agree with that?
American heritage, not just any heritage, is what I'm saying.
Oh, you don't think that you're allowed to acknowledge your Christian heritage or your Jewish heritage or your Muslim heritage?
I'm saying you members of Congress need to acknowledge American heritage.
All right, joining me now is the 16-year-old at the center of it all. It's Marco Hunter Lopez here with us in Dallas. Marco, what a day.
It was, it was a busy day. It was not expecting that to go down.
Let me give you a moment to describe exactly what it is you were saying when you weren't being interrupted by Congressman Raskin. That the American heritage of what should be acknowledged.
Correct. I was just trying to explain to him that he kept referring it to secular law, and he can refer to it as what he wants it, but I was trying to explain that America was founded on Christian values and Judeo-Christian values, and our founding documents are listed from the Bible. That's what I was trying to get across to him.
And I'm surprised to hear a congressman be so aggressive with a 16-year-old. Now, you were a witness there in Congress, and tell us why you were a witness, by the way. What happened at your school in Raleigh, Texas?
So on February 2nd of this year, an organization, Why Islam, was on my campus distributing pamphlets on Sharia law, Qurans, and even putting hijabs on teen girls in my school. And I reported that, and come to find out, the organization was actually connected to multiple terrorist organizations, as dubbed by the governor of Texas. And so that was very concerning. Congressman Roy reached out and asked if I could testify, and that's how it came about.
Yeah, and I mean, first of all, when I get home, Hunter, you're 16, I'm going to have to give yet another lecture to my sons. Because, man, in an age where we're told that young men and young people in general are staring at their phones and forgetting how to communicate with one another, you're not only public speaking on national television with me right now, but you are taking it direct fire from a Democrat congressman. Why? Why are you so comfortable publicly speaking?
Yes, when I was speaking to him, actually before he took off the flight, so it was less than 24 hours, my mom said, "Promise me you're not going to go viral." And I said, "I can't make any promises." And he challenged me. He called me out. He said, "Mr. Hunter Lopez." So I took the fight, and he was obviously scared that I was going to prove him wrong, so all he could do was interrupt me.
Your mom said, "Promise me you won't go viral."
Correct, and I said, "I can't make any promises."
Yeah, well, you failed that. You failed your mother, Hunter.
I did.
Good job.
I'm sorry, Mom.
You're also unique not just in your ability to speak publicly, but young men are a little bit more like you these days. They're showing that they are not only more conservative, but they are more religious. You see this poll. It's unfortunately gone a little bit the opposite way for women over time, but 18 to 29-year-old men it's gone up almost, 14 points in 3 years on men more religious. And you see there, women gone down 3 points. What's going on?
I don't know. I think we just got people of faith and prayer warriors need to continue praying because obviously the men have a strong part in the household as head of the household, but the women are the nurturers and the women are there to have the household stand strong as well. So we need to continue to pray that women will find Christ too.
Yeah. Okay. Last, I want to give you as much time as you.
I'm sorry, but I got to be honest with you guys. I was super impressed by Hunter. I was super impressed by this dude. I'm like 16 years old. More 16-year-olds need to be like this guy. Like, shout out out to Hunter Lopez. Very, very smart guy. Very, he articulates himself very well. He presents himself well. I was super proud of him. I thought he did a great job. You know, he stood up to Congressman Raskins in a great way, corrected him a couple of times, wasn't afraid to say what was on his mind, how he felt. Like I said, this kid has a bright future in politics if he wants to go that way.
You're incredibly impressive. What is the message that you would try to give to Congressman Raskin or anyone about the nature and the heritage of America?
Like I was saying in that hearing, I believe it was 56 of the 57 Declaration of Independence signers were Bible-believing, church-attending Christians. God was mentioned 4 times in the Declaration of Independence. The Declaration of Independence ends as a prayer. The original 13 colonies required you to declare faith in Christ to serve. And so what I was trying to say is, I'm not saying we have to go back to saying you have to believe in Christ to run for office, but what I am saying is we need to acknowledge that heritage. And what I was trying to explain is that the organization that went on campus not only was not that, but completely antithetical to Western civilization.
Understand where we came from to know where we are going.
Yes.
Really good stuff. Marcus Hunter Lopez, thank you so much for being with us.
Shout out to Marcus Hunter Lopez.
It is now time for the... Be sure...
All right, shout out to Marcus Hunter Lopez. All right, so keeping in congruency with some political news, I want to go to, before we go over to, Chud the Weirdo being arrested. Let's see, we got the Young Turks. Trump glazes Xi Jinping. Oh boy, here we go.
This cleaner is insane. It removes baked-on oven grease, black mold, and years of soap scum from any surface without scrubbing, without bleach, and without...
First stories about Donald Trump.
All right, so we know President Trump made a trip to China. Took a lot of officials with him. Took a lot of businessmen with him. Elon Musk, I believe, was with him. The ex-CEO of Apple, I believe, was with him. A couple of individuals traveled with him. And yeah, you have some people saying that, Xi Jinping kind of punked President Trump. You have some people saying it was a decent meetup. I didn't really know how I felt about, the warning of being careful because if Taiwan is mishandled, it could lead to conflict. I didn't really appreciate that. Not sure how President Trump and his cabinet feels about it, but I guess we'll find out in the days to come. So let's take a listen.
Going to China. And when Trump went there, he might have made a secret deal. I want to ask Representative Khan about that in a minute. I think that there might be an exchange between Iran and Taiwan in regards to China. We'll come back to that. And he said that it was okay that China spies in on us. We'll also come back to that. But first, I want to show you why Trump might have been in such a good mood in China to begin with. Let's watch.
This is a great honor. It was a fantastic day. And in particular, I want to thank President Xi, my friend, for this magnificent welcome. As allies in World War II, President Franklin Roosevelt's mentions of the brave people of China, that's what they were, drew loud cheers in his speeches in the United States, and everybody loved what he had to say, just as many Chinese now love basketball and blue jeans. Chinese restaurants in America today outnumber the 5 largest fast food chains in the United States, all combined. That's a pretty big statement.
So we're really happy with China now because we eat a lot of Chinese food in America. Okay, interesting. Well, I'm going to bring you in right away here. We're going to talk about the trade deals, potential war in Iran, and the future of Taiwan. But the Chinese seem to have done something smart here. They buttered them up pretty well. They give them a red carpet treatment, and the kids applauding, and so do you think that helps to soften Trump's attitude towards China?
Of course it did. I mean, now people know the playbook. Flattery is the key to almost any politician, but it's certainly the key to Donald Trump. And Xi Jinping made a big deal of taking him to the walk in one of his private gardens. And what's ironic is
the funny thing is that I got a chance to see President Trump's arrival there. And I did play some of that last night on the live stream. Like, we didn't play much of it, but definitely him kind of coming off the plane. You see the women there that are set up to do the traditional dancing as someone arrives to the island. You see that happening there, like the greeting, and like he said, flattery is the biggest thing, especially for any politician. I mean, I don't think President Trump minds flattering every now and then, as we see when he's presented with certain things. He's pretty appreciative of it, and he usually gives a decent speech as to how much he likes what he's presented with afterwards, right? So I do think flattery was a key thing here, and that it softened him up. From what I understand, Xi Jinping took him through his garden, and the only other person that's been in his garden or walked through his garden with him has been Putin. And, they were saying, how President Trump, esteems Vladimir Putin. So it was just things like that kind of stood out to me, where I thought this was interesting. I don't know how I felt about this meet overall. I kind of felt like it was a little bit of a dud. I'm not sure what came from it. What was the point of it? From what I understand, nothing huge was accomplished by it, but we'll keep following.
Because he says, the only other person who's been here is Putin, and of course we know Trump's obsession and admiration for strong authoritarian leaders. And so they basically got what they wanted, which is Donald Trump standing up for our manufacturers, our workers, our farmers, talking about ending the Chinese dumping and Chinese state subsidies, and not standing up for the Taiwan Relations Act, and basically saying, okay, I'm willing to listen to what you want.
Yeah, so we're going to go one by one, and I'm really curious what you think about my theory in a minute, that they might have done a kind of a secret deal. But first, let's talk about what you're mentioning here, all the different things that he seemed to be okay with China doing. I'm not sure we were okay with. So let me show you a bunch of clips. Let's go to first their cyber attacks against us.
He joked about attacks that we did in China. But we do too. It's like the spying. They're talking about, the spying. I said, we do it too. Look, no, I'm talking about spying. The question was asking me yesterday, I guess, what about the fact that China's spying in the United States? I said, well, one of those things, because we spy like hell at them too. So,
what about the fact that China is putting in the U.S. infrastructure code that they could use if you ever decide to come to the
Well, you don't know that. I mean, I'd like to see it, but it's very possible that they do. And they're doing things that I told you. A lot of stuff to you that you don't know about it. You're doing things to us that we probably do know about. But we do plenty. It's a double success.
Are you researching dental implants?
There's a lot of dental offices that'll talk about doing their teeth.
If we do a lot of things to them that they don't know about, our president probably shouldn't tell them that. Okay, and I've never seen a president defend another country spying this much. Well, asterisks, unless it's Israel. But congratulations, China. Now you're in Israel's category. You're apparently almost allowed to spy on us. But he wasn't on the spying issue. Here's more.
I was at an interview with a very bad, stupid reporter. She works for CBS. She said that 60 minutes. Stupid person. Just an average person. She's talking about China and this and that. They steal this and they steal that. I said, yeah, we do it to them too. They spy on us. I said, we spy on them too, I guess, So some people thought that was cute. Other people said, you don't have to say that. I said, I sort of do. No, we do things and they do things, and that's the way it is.
Representative Khanna, is that normal? Are we supposed to allow one of our biggest adversaries to spy in on us and think that it's no big deal?
Of course it's not. I mean, look, there is Trump was known for sort of straight talk and no BS, and he says, here, I'm going to level with you. America has these spying operations, and China does as well. That'd be one thing. But he's saying, I'm fine with that. No, the job of the American president is to say, we will make sure that they don't penetrate our critical security infrastructure and our critical defense infrastructure infrastructure and our critical financial infrastructure. I'm not naive. American people aren't naive. They do this, and we need to make sure that they stop doing it in ways that compromise our security. But for whatever reason, he has gotten spooked. My theory is he's gotten spooked for two reasons. One, China has a monopoly on rare earths. He never anticipated when he did his initial tariffs that they would actually go there, and they have more leverage because they've threatened to stop that, and he hasn't gotten any deal to extend them beyond a year. And secondly, he's spooked because of the war in Iran that's going disastrously. Prices are up. The Strait of Hormuz is blockaded. He needs China's help, and so he's gone in with very little leverage.
All right, let's talk about more that he promised them. He talked about allowing the 500,000 students from China to be here. Let's watch that.
We requested for a lot. We have Visa, which is not allowed to trade, and if they were there, it was a big company, and other companies are allowed to trade. And then I said, what about letting Visa? We had the head of Visa there today. By the way, Visa's a big deal. I said, what about using Visa in China? For some reason, they were blackballed. Maybe that'll come off.
So he brought a lot of business men there, and he talked about allowing the 500,000 students to have their visas here. So both the company visa and Chinese visas are apparently approved and perfectly fine. Do you know your brain rot index? No, of course you don't. I didn't either exactly what it was. But yours for phone. Unfortunately, it's zero. Maybe shows you unrot. She bring you joke proof. But he was with them, with him. And from China's perspective, I'm going to go to graphic 2 here. Chinese leaders, Xi Jinping, meanwhile, wants, quote, strategic stability, a predictable relation in which Washington doesn't impede Beijing's economic and geopolitical rise. I get that from their perspective. From our perspective, Representative Hanna, it felt like he was, instead of bringing like senators and other government officials, he was bringing the people actually in charge of our government, the head of NVIDIA, Elon Musk, and other business leaders, as if to say, like, okay, all the decision makers are here. So how did you feel about that and the student visas?
Well, he brought the global elite with him. I mean, the very global elite he railed against. And look, he had to take some business leaders, but not a single medium-sized manufacturer, not a single farmer, not a single worker. Like all the people he held campaign rallies with, none of them made the trip. And he basically took the elite who sold down American workers. I mean, these are the same people who were pushing for China to be part of the World Trade Organization with most favored nation status. These are the folks who created the China shock because they wanted cheap labor and they wanted capital to go to China to get high returns. These are the people who offshore the jobs. And now he's going with them to beg China for investment into America with jobs that aren't going to have labor unions and that are going to abuse workers. A total betrayal of everything he ran for and of American workers. Now, on the Chinese students, I've always felt that we should have Chinese students here. I think it's demagoguery to say we don't want Chinese students. 38% of AI companies' workforce is actually Chinese origin. But that's one area that I think he hasn't demagogued. But the economics is just wrong in betraying American workers.
Yeah, and of course these companies don't have America's best interests in mind. It's not to say that they're bad or immoral or evil. They're amoral. They have no morality. They're corporations. And their interest is in trading more with China. And that might be to our benefit, and often is. And sometimes it's not to our benefit, but they're not there for our benefit. They're there for their own benefit. Greg, let me show you the list here real quick. Jensen Huang from NVIDIA, Elon Musk from Tesla, Tim Cook from Apple, Larry Fink from BlackRock, Steven Schwartzman from Blackstone. Those are two huge finance companies. Kelly Ortberg from Boeing, and the list goes on. In fact, about Boeing, I have one more for you. Graphic 5. His one detailed announcement during the visit that China would buy 200 Boeing aircraft, fewer than expected 500, led the company's stock to fall nearly 4%. So the Chinese are actually not buying as much from us as we expected. So the stocks dropped. So that was somewhat counterproductive. But now we get to the most important part, Taiwan and Iran. I'm going to go to graphic 7 here because she said that any mishandling of tensions over the island, a self-governing democracy, Beijing wants to control could spark a, quote, extremely dangerous situation and not for the potential for a great power war. This got me worried that they are actually thinking of taking Taiwan physically, literally. We'll get to Rose's thoughts on that in a second, but first a clip.
Yeah, because why else would they say something like that? What else would be the point of Xi Jinping saying something like that? The Riddler 2, shout out to you. Thanks for stopping by. Hit that like button. Shout out to you, buddy. But yeah, like soon as he said that, this prompted me to think that they are going to take Taiwan. I thought to myself, well, of course they. What would be the point of Xi saying that to President Trump if that wasn't on the agenda somewhere? If that wasn't something that he had in the back of his mind, there would be no reason to say tread. He basically told President Trump to tread lightly. That's basically what he said. He's like, tread lightly, because if you don't, based on some of the plans that we have that I might not be telling you about, this situation could go south really quick. And that's why I didn't appreciate the comment, because that's the way that I took it.
There was a risk of conflict with the US over Taiwan.
No, I don't think so. I think we'll be fine. He doesn't want to see any war. He doesn't want to see a movement for independence. He says, look, we've had it for thousands of years, and then at a certain period of time and left, and we're going to get it back. And the Korean War, a lot of things happen with all this. But no, for Taiwan, he feels.
The more you stay home, the less you want to leave. And the more you stay, the heavier everything feels.
Didn't make a commitment to defend our ally either way. Interesting, there's more on that when he sat down with Fox News.
Which I will say this, I'm not looking to have somebody go independent and, we're supposed to travel 9,500 miles to fight a war. I'm not looking for that. I want them to cool down. I want China to cool down.
But you're waiting on approving billions of dollars in weapons to Taiwan.
Well, I haven't approved it yet. We're going to see what happens.
Interesting. So Representative Kanazan is a guest host with us today. So before I get to my theory on this, which is going to involve Iran, let's just talk about the facts here. President Trump is saying he didn't make a comment on whether we would defend Taiwan, presumably if they're attacked. He said we don't want to go 9,500 miles to defend them. He said he might not sell them weapons anymore. What's your take on that, Ro?
Well, this is where knowing some history and foreign policy actually matters. Our policy of strategic ambiguity is not that we're going to duck making a commitment on providing weapons or providing support. It's that we're not going to specify exactly what we would do if China attacked Taiwan. And the policy has served us well and actually led to peace. We have basically said that China and Taiwan can negotiate the future of Taiwan peacefully, and we're not going to intervene. But if they engage in military coercion, as they are currently doing in terms of increasing the patrols around the island, then we have a problem with that. And the Taiwan Relations Act allows us to provide Taiwan with support and weapons. That's not our troops going 9,500 miles. That's us providing them with weapons, which Reagan in 1982 provided 6 assurances to Taiwan about and said, we will never consult Beijing in providing these weapons. Congress passed those weapons authorization, I think unanimously or with 1 or 2 dissenting votes, and it would really be reneging on that assistance under the Taiwan Relations Act for the president not to do it, and giving Xi Jinping just more of a license to accelerate the military coercion.
Yeah, on that one, so I get the strategic ambiguity. We talked a lot about it on the show, and every president does it. So I would caution the audience, don't get too frustrated if Trump isn't telling you exactly what we would do with Taiwan, because that is partly U.S. foreign policy. But when Xi Jinping alludes to, hey, don't mess with us in Taiwan, it feels like it's a little foreboding. And then the president says, I basically doesn't say whether he would defend Taiwan. I do get nervous. Is it possible that could get interpreted as a green light?
Yeah, that's kind of crazy. It's like, I was literally, some of the things he's saying I was thinking about, because I'm thinking to myself like, so when President Trump is talking, especially aboard, I think he's on Air Force One when he's having this mini press conference, and he's saying like, he doesn't want, war over Taiwan. He feels like that would be really bad. I'm not gonna lie, there were certain parts of me that were watching this and I was like, who cares about what he wants? Who cares if he thinks it's gonna be bad? Like, there were sides of me that felt like, so Xi felt like President Trump can go to China and he was just going to basically run down a set of rules. Okay, so we got our laughs in, right, when Marco and the cabinet was getting ready to travel over there and they were mocking Maduro's capture and all of that. But then, like, we kind of see Xi Jinping with this disposition of like, yeah, this is the way I want things, and if they don't play out this way, things are going to go south. Well, I don't really know how somebody like Marco Rubio took that. I hope it rubbed him the wrong way, but we'll see. I looked at it like, just like he did, though. Like, I'm like, what is this, a green light? Because that's kind of crazy. And we see Taiwan just take over, and we see China just take Taiwan. But you have news sources and other people saying like Xi would want nothing more than to see a Chinese flag flying over Taiwan. And I'm just thinking to myself like, man, this is going to be crazy. I know that that's not something that President Trump wants, or many countries in the world, and simply because of the chip, the chip situation. That would be horrible if now China has Taiwan and they're in control of all of that, AI information and technology. Let's keep watching.
Kind of like George H.W. Bush's ambassador accidentally giving the green light to Iraq, saying that maybe we wouldn't defend Kuwait before the first Persian Gulf War.
It's a good point, Jack. And the president should have said, let me just be clear, Mr. Xi Jinping, you will not take Taiwan militarily. The one-China policy does not allow you to militarily take Taiwan.
And that right there, I guess there is some concern I have, because we didn't see President Trump or hear him say that, but he did say that to Putin. There was plenty of times when he was in office and he told Putin, like, don't do it, don't go after Ukraine, and he was transparent about it. He said there were plenty of times I said, Vlad, don't do it, Vlad, you're gonna regret it. And he said this when he was in office. But coming back from his visit with China, we don't hear President Trump with that same energy. He didn't tell Xi that, hey, don't do it. Like, leave Taiwan alone. Don't even think about it, because it's not going to work out well. Or at least if he did say something like that, we don't know, because he hasn't said anything about it.
And if you do that, the international community, led by the United States, is going to come to Taiwan's support. And what we will do, he doesn't have to specify, but he needed to push back. Instead, he just says, I haven't made a decision or a commitment one way or the other, basically saying, I don't really care about the future of Taiwan. Let Xi, if Xi Jinping wants to take it, we'll cross that bridge when it happens. I mean, it was really a weak, very weak statement. And there's people who are too hawkish on this, who are really belligerent to trying to create a Cold War. I don't believe that, but I do believe you have to stand up for territorial integrity not being violated by a military invasion.
Yeah, I don't think we need to do anything provocative like Nancy Pelosi did, in my opinion, by going to Taiwan out of nowhere, and then that led to more sales and more antagonizing of China. On the other hand, we are supposed to defend them, and so if we say we don't promise to defend them militarily, yeah, I'm worried that could be misinterpreted. But maybe it's not a matter of misinterpreting. Maybe there's a grand bargain here. So before we get to that discussion, last video is about Iran, and that'll be part of that grand bargain discussion. Let's watch.
This is not another minty treat to mask bad dog breath. This is pro-right advanced.
So, look, the strait is not open, and we can't transit through it. They could wreck the entire world economy, especially if we go back in. But what that made me think is, look, when you read the stories in all the mainstream press and you hear the details, it looks like this was a giant nothing burger. They get together, there's barely any trade done, a lot of CEOs go, but we get actually a smaller deal than we expected on the one tangible Boeing deal. It doesn't seem like we had reached any kind of agreement on Taiwan or Iran or really anything else. But I wonder if there was a grand bargain struck, and along that we don't know about, along the lines of Iran and Taiwan. And so I want to run this by you, Rob. So as I looked at all of those context clues, I thought basically Xi Jinping is saying, well, if you're in the middle of a hot war, we won't give weapons to Iran, right? But we don't say much about Iran otherwise. And remember, though, if we go into Taiwan, you're not to come to Taiwan. And Trump says, well, okay. And publicly, like, maybe. So did they strike a deal that, hey, Trump tells them we're going back into Iran, basically, and don't do anything about it? And China says, all right, then we'll take Taiwan, and you don't do anything about it. That's what I'm concerned about.
That's crazy.
Well, I'm concerned certainly that Trump wasn't clear enough, and it's because of the lost leverage of this dumb, immoral war in Iran. I mean, we now need China not to come to the Iranian regime's defense. We need China ultimately to be pressuring Iran to open the Strait of Hormuz. And whether Trump gave the green light, I may not go that far, but he certainly is hesitating to provide Taiwan with the arms that Congress has provided, that the Taiwan Relations Act requires. And if he renegotiates that is not just a Trump thing. That binds potentially future presidents. He's overturning a Reagan assurance to Taiwan, saying that we aren't going to consult Beijing and we're going to provide you arms under the Taiwan Relations Act. And now Trump is saying, well, you know what, I'm not going to do it because China is upset. Well, the next president coming in is going to have to negotiate once we've given up this leverage to China and undermine policy for decades. So it's weakening the U.S. posture and slowly eroding the possibility of Taiwan not being coerced into being part of China.
Yeah, so look, you put my theory aside, back to the facts that you're stating here. Even if there is no secret agreement, if we go back into Iran,
if there was any part of that's true, that's literally horrible. Like if President Trump and if there was some type of an agreement like that made in the background, like, okay, well, we're gonna keep dealing with Iran and you don't get mad and do anything, and China's like, all right, well, we're gonna deal with Taiwan and you don't do anything because it's going to turn really bad. That, if anything like that was done behind doors, and I think if it was, even if no one's saying anything to us in the future, eventually we'll see it start to play out. That would be crazy work if that's actually what happened. But we'll see it play out if that's actually what happened behind closed doors and we're not being told the truth.
How in the hell are we going to make sure that Venezuela stays in line and hence we have ships off their coast? We're in the middle of the most disastrous war in a long time in Iran, and then we're going to go defend Taiwan. Is there any realistic chance that we could actually go 9,500 miles across the seas and whatever is left of our Navy show up there and fight and win a war against China? So is Taiwan in de facto, in reality, pretty much defenseless now?
Well, we've certainly compromised a lot of our munitions in Iran that would be needed in a battle in the South Pacific. We have stretched already in two war theaters in Venezuela and in the Middle East. So I would argue that while we still have a significant naval presence in the South China Sea, we've weakened our position. But I I don't believe that this means, okay, Xi Jinping is going to go into Taiwan, partly because they have a strategy. They just met the KMT leader, as you know. The KMT leader who's coming to America actually is the opposition leader, wants to integrate with China peacefully. And my guess is that China is it's a patient civilization, and they're going to try over the next decade a more peaceful integration rather than going, conquering Taiwan, antagonizing the international community, risking sanctions, having antagonism even within Taiwan. I just don't see that being their course of action. But I believe that Trump has weakened our leverage.
Yeah, I'm going to stay on that one more minute because I hear what you're saying. And before, I never heard China talking about the military option in regards to Taiwan. And generally, you're right, they disfavor the public, the military option. Their strategy is, why don't we go into these countries and instead of threatening them, bullying them, killing them,
they don't want you to know about it.
Hey. Did you know you might get a big cash payout if you were in a car accident up to 1 year ago, even if you weren't driving?
Imposing a public leader, etc. We actually help build bridges and schools, and they want to work with us. So going the military direction would be surprising, and I think that they have the better strategy. And they just saw our military get depleted in Iran and Russia's military get depleted in Ukraine. On the other hand, I have never seen them talk about the military option this significantly and clearly. And Ro, wouldn't this be the one time, like let's say that a reasonable, sensible, sane Democratic president, or even a sane Republican president gets back into office, the military option would probably be lifted in terms of what China has. Like at that point, America would almost certainly defend Taiwan. But if we re-engage in Iran and we're totally bogged down there, and you've got this madman Trump in charge, and he's already said to China, basically, I don't really care about anything that isn't Israel's neighbor. So, if ever there was an opportunity to take Taiwan, and I got family in Taiwan, I'm pretty worried about it, but I'm not being hyperbolic. And before this trip, I would have said, and I did say, well, there's no way China's going in militarily. But after three different times, he says, now remember, if we go in militarily, you don't do anything. In fact, last thing I was mentioning is I forget the Greek philosopher that he mentioned. It sounds a little bit like Tostitos. But anyway, the Tostitos tragedy that Xi Jinping referred to was, hey, when there's a rising power and a power that's losing its power, usually there's a military clash. And he said, we can avoid that. We don't need to have a military clash. I thought, well, that's true. And I really like that. On the other hand, wait. Don't tell me we're the declining power and that you're going to pass us. And then don't tell me for the third time, hey, don't interfere if I use up our military. That's what's got me concerned.
Yeah.
You're right.
It was things like that. I can say there were things like that had me concerned, because I'm like, wait a minute, what kind of conversation is this? Like, at this point, I feel like our president's kind of being run. And what's going on with that, So, yeah, I had that same tone, was the same tone that I got listening to some of the things that President Trump was being told. And I'm just thinking to myself, like, okay, Xi Jinping came prepared. He's like, listen, this is what's going down. This is how it's going down. And that's just the vibe that I got. Now, I'm not saying that that's how it went 100%. But obviously, it seems like other people who saw and heard feel the same exact way. So I didn't like the undertone of this it wasn't an argument, but of this discussion. But we'll just have to keep watching in the coming days to see what happens. So with that being said, let's actually go to the next clip. I want to go over to let's do so that was he glazed him, right? Okay.
Stop using Wi-Fi doorbells.
I want to look at a couple of things that's happening with landmark cases as well. But before that, was there like one more thing that Bill O'Reilly covered that I wanted us to look at? I mean, we have America's economic pain. Let's see. Now, Bill O'Reilly recently had a talk with China.
World order is a big thing for the Chinese.
Now, here's the schedule. 2 days in China. China's 12 hours ahead of us. So when President comes back on Friday, he doesn't lose any time. He'll zip in there tomorrow. And this is a very tight schedule. There's a banquet, there's a lunch, there's a photo session, and there's a Q&A. President Trump's going to answer questions from the Chinese press. I hope he doesn't call them names. So he'll get confused about that, like he does with the American press. But it's all lined up, and the Chinese, of course, they'll never admit this, but they're flattered. Because they know, this is a big deal. For a president of the United States to go to Beijing, the last time this happened.
Now, when Bill O'Reilly is doing this, President Trump actually had not yet made his way to China, which now he already has. So let's actually go watch something a little bit more. I want to watch something a little bit more recent that Bill O'Reilly did in reference to President Trump going to China and his personal visit to China, because he did do something a couple of hours ago. So let's actually go to that instead. There was also some deceitful polling that Bill O'Reilly covered that I kind of wanted to take a look at. So let's go over there now.
On the social front, I'm going to use the word social, but it's more of an emotional thing. There are people, as we all know, that are rooting for the United States to lose. And I discussed that with Chris Cuomo last night on News Nation. Go. So if you're an American rooting for your country, you want it to all go our way over there, correct?
Yes, but I think that it is unfair to accuse people of a lack of patriotism because they lose that's the implication. So if you have any criticism, if you have concerns about the setup and the factors in bringing over big business guys when you're supposed to be helping the American worker, that means that you want America to lose. I reject that premise. That's all I'm saying.
Look, I didn't get into any of that. But it's by got into a very simple question. The simple question is, this is the structure. This is what's happening. Do you want your country to win? And you answered appropriately, I believe. Yes.
We'll see.
Okay. Now, I don't think Cuomo wants America to lose. I don't like the we'll see business. That's a fallback now for every television moderator. Oh, we'll see. What good does that do? Yeah, all right, fine. Why it's like at the end of the day, how many of those are you going to have to absorb? Okay? We're not going to see anything. Things will unfold, but we don't know how. But if you're not rooting for America to have a positive outcome from this Beijing meeting, then you're not patriotic. Remember Kenny Rogers, okay? There'll be time enough for counting when the dealing's done, not while it's in the process. Okay, so here I am. I don't know if my arm is long enough to pat myself on the back the way I want to. But this whole thing began on February 28th of this year, this Iranian thing. On March 3rd, all right, just a couple of days later, here's what I said. Go. After the State of the Union, I said, President Trump's speech is going to swing independence over to the Republican side. Now, that might not last. Certainly if Iran goes south, the president's going to have some problems. This is a big gamble on his part. Big. Now, if it turns out like Venezuela, he's going to be a hero. But boy, he's rolling the dice. And absolutely true, and I told the president that myself. But he is a gambler. He is, willing to take risks. But it's not over. And there's no fat lady singing. Okay? That's why this story is intriguing but frustrating. Turning 65 years old, they are.
Well, we all know that President Trump is willing to gamble, and he's willing. Sometimes some people would say he's willing to gamble the entire country, and they don't know where his boundaries are. But as someone who has made deals most of his life, I think when someone's good at this, when they have the art of deal making, right, for lack of better terms, is something President Trump would say. I think a lot of the times putting people on edge, people wondering what's going to happen next. Is this a safe thing he's doing? Is just part of his strategy, right? So I just feel like watching this is something that we're going to have to keep a very close eye on because I feel like at any point in time, things can go left, right, south, either way, right? We got President Trump not being very clear about what happens if Xi decides to go take Taiwan. We know that Xi said something about if Taiwan's mishandled, this could lead to conflict. We don't know if behind closed doors, there was something said like, well, we're going to go ahead and keep dealing with Iran and you don't do anything. And then maybe Xi said, well, we're going to deal with Taiwan and you guys don't do anything. So we're not really made privy right now to a whole lot of stuff, right? We're not getting a lot of transparency right now. And that's not super, shocking when it comes to mainstream media. But what I want to do is move over to some of the gerrymandering hysteria, right? Some of the, some of the madness that we're seeing going on in the news. And we got some things going on down in Louisiana. We got a couple of people talking about why it's so bad about what they're doing with the redistricting. A couple of Supreme Court rules against Republican and landmark case. Like just a couple of things that we're going to look at regarding around this whole redistricting thing. So let's take a listen. First up, let's go to Hook Global. We got Hakeem Jeffries. I'm telling you right now, Jeffries' stunning plan to flip GOP seats in 2028. I don't know. They might be successful. They flipped a lot of seats so far.
24 seats.
You ultimately lost this. You take personal.
Who lost?
You lost.
Who lost? Did the voters lose?
Democrats did.
Did the voters lose?
You take personal responsibility for investing so much time and resources, tens of millions of dollars, and ultimately fruitless.
We did the right thing, and this effort is not over. It's just getting started. And by the way, come back to me on November 4th when Democrats have taken back control of the House of Representatives. That's ultimately going to be, what matters. What do the American people, we are going to win the House of Representatives. I'm telling you that right now. I've been telling you that from the very beginning. And by the way, what math are people focused on when they think about the electoral environment that we're in? When Democrats took the House back in 2018, and at minimum we're in the 2018 environment.
The College of Professional Studies is a hub for lifelong learning. We have so...
When Democrats took the House back, we had to flip 24 seats in 2018. 24 seats. Which people said was impossible to do. We didn't just flip 24 seats in 2018. We flipped 40. And of those 40 seats, 31 were in districts that Donald Trump had just won. In this particular instance, we started out this Congress needing to flip 3. When it's all said and done, Republicans at best will add a handful of gerrymandered seats to that total. When it's all said and done. So I think what that means is that we just have to flip a fraction of the seats that we flipped in 2018. A fraction of the seats that we flipped in 2018, and we're in the majority. And so we're going to proceed full steam ahead everywhere in terms of pushing back against MAGA extremism. And we understand that Republicans, desperate as they are, because they've been a complete and total failure, are going to proceed with diabolical intensity to try to steal the election. Instead of changing direction, they want to change districts. But they can't get anywhere close to 24. They can't even get close to double digits when it's all said and done. And so Susan Bennett said earlier today, we're going to win back control of the House. And the big fight will be what happens in between 2026 and 2028. Because we know this unprecedented assault on black political representation, the likes of which we have not seen since the Jim Crow era, the ghost of the Confederacy has afflicted the United States Supreme Court majority and is invading and haunting the nation right now, and we take that seriously. And we know it's going to continue. Which is why Democrats are committed to launching a decisive and overwhelming response in advance of the 2028 election.
I mean, I'm just going to be honest with you guys. Now, you don't have to be a huge fan of the Democrats right now. You don't have to like anything that they're doing. But 24, is that what Hakeem said, 24 to 28 seats? That's a lot. Like, that's a decent amount. So, that right there, if you want me to be honest with you, we as the American people should be able to look at that and say, okay, the people are speaking, right? Like, the people are speaking, and this is way before all of this redistricting and things like that started happening. Some of it was taking place, but it wasn't, like, widespread. It wasn't wildfire. So that's important to pay attention to, that seats are being flipped. There are a lot of GOP seats that have been flipped thus far.
To ensure that it's the American people who are the ones who get to decide who's in the majority in the House, who's in the majority in the Senate, and ultimately in 2028, who gets elected as the next president of the United States of America.
Your math really has gotten more difficult. Do you see it as just a harder path now to the majority?
What's the math as you see it? What's the math as you see it so that we understand the same?
Well, it just looks like we're taking up more seats through redistricting.
But I'm saying, what's the math? Because we started at 3. Where do you think it's at right now?
I don't know. You said yourself, not quite double digit. I think that's what people are looking at. Pick up net 5 or something, 7, maybe 9.
Yeah, so let's give them a net of 3, for instance, because we're going to win 5 seats in California. They'll be fortunate if they win 3 in Texas. They're not defeating Vicente Gonzalez, and they're not defeating Henry Cuellar. In fact, they aren't even contesting the Cuellar seat right now. And we know that it's the Cuellar seat and the Gonzalez seat that are counted amongst the 5. They're not getting 5 out of Texas. They'll be fortunate if they get 3. And because we're going to defeat the current incumbent in Texas 15, right next to Representative Cuellar and Gonzalez, they may only get 2 out of Texas. We're getting 5 out of California. They start down 3. So I ask you, what's the math that you're talking about? Right? When they start down 3. And we're going to win at least 2 seats in Virginia, as I talked about, under this map, if it holds. Don Davis is going to get reelected in North Carolina. We pushed them back substantially in Ohio. And so we're full steam ahead. And maybe we have to flip 5 seats. Maybe we have to flip 6 seats. We'll see where it all lands. Once all the litigation is over, do we think we're going to flip more than 6 seats when we've identified 45 that are in play? The answer is unequivocally yes. Of course we are.
And then to follow up, are you essentially saying that the redistricting war now shifts to 2028, or are you still eyeing potential redistricting fights in some of the outstanding states?
We have ongoing litigation right now in three different states, in Virginia, in Florida, which is a blatantly unconstitutional map. And by the way, even by the Republicans' own math, there's no circumstance they're netting 4 seats out of Florida. They know it, and we know it. But that map shouldn't even go forward, and we'll see what the Florida Supreme Court does. And we still have ongoing litigation in Wisconsin. Those are the 3 states right now that are unresolved. And then, of course, led by the Congressional Black Caucus and our nation's civil rights groups, we're tracking what's happening in the Deep South, which is an all-out assault on black political representation. It's disgusting. And Republicans are doing it openly, in plain sight, targeting African-American communities. This is who they are. They're not even pretending to try to solve problems on behalf of the American people. Because we know they're actively hurting the American people. So what I am saying is, we're winning control of the House of Representatives. That's the reality of the situation.
I mean, right here, I can be honest with you guys. I might not like every single thing I hear Hakeem Jeffries talking about, but a lot of it that he's saying, he has some leverage here. He has some leverage. The fact of the matter is that if we just pay attention to the approval rating of President Trump right now, it's not looking the greatest. There are a lot of people who are upset by the war. They're upset by what's going on. They're upset by how long the war has went on. Even if it started, I think some people were willing to extend President Trump some sort of grace at first, but then the longer it took, the longer they were like, and I mean literally, the next clip we're gonna watch, it's gonna be Nick Fuentes and Steven Crowder. Shout out to Purge Viral. He caught a clip of them having a conversation. It's not too long. I just had it up. I would have to go back and find it so I can tell you guys exactly how long it is. But it's not too long, but we're going to take a look at it. And the comments underneath it are absolutely, they're just insane. Like, people are going crazy. It's probably like a 31-minute clip. We're not going to watch that much of it. But literally, you have people saying just, even Trump is scared of Nick, which I know that that's not true. But let's see. We gave MAGA Republicans everything, all the power, and they gave us nothing in return. So you have a lot of people upset with President Trump. His approval rating, it has tanked. Even the likes of Bill O'Reilly has admitted to that. What I love about Bill is that he goes through it with us as to why it pretty much has happened. But yeah, like when I take a look at this and I really look at what Hakeem Jeffries is saying, we might not like it, but he has a lot of leverage here. He's making a lot of sense. And the Republicans will lose something. They're not going to maintain the entire House. That's just not something I'm 100% confident in any longer. Like I always say on the live stream, I felt better about it last November. By the time we hit January of 2026, I was like, yeah, this is not looking good. By the time we were in February, I was like, there ain't no way. And pretty much now, everyone would agree with me. I would say even there are Republicans that would say, yeah, we're definitely going to lose something because of what has been going on. So let's watch Hakeem Jeffries a little bit longer.
With Donald Trump on the ballot, we won 215 seats. What do you think is going to happen with him not on the ballot and having been a complete and total failure? So the challenge that is in front of us is ensuring that there is a decisive and overwhelming response in advance of 2028. Because the Republican efforts to gerrymander the national congressional map is not going to end because this is all they know how to do. It's the only reason they're in the majority right now, as a matter of fact, because of what happened in North Carolina. And so I've been very publicly clear about the fact that in advance of 2028, where we will have additional states that will come online, including but not limited to New York, New Jersey, Colorado, Washington, Oregon, Illinois, and Maryland. That's at least 7 states where we will be able to unleash a decisive and forceful response to what they are doing in the Deep South. And I'm telling you right now, we will. As several of those governors have already publicly indicated, and as the Senate President in New Jersey just said earlier today.
Thank you, Mr. Leary. Given everything that's happened with the redistricting wars and with Speaker Johnson this term and the president's attacks on you and Jenny Higgins, the controversy around that, if you all won the majority back the way that you have told us repeatedly will occur in November, what does that look like from a governing perspective? How are you going to go about trying to build coalitions and get things done? Are you going to take, you criticize Republicans for your words of my way, how I approach that, and approach that you think will work with the Democratic majority, or will you try to build bridges, build coalitions? Will that be possible given all of the acrimony that's occurred during this Congress between your side and the Republicans?
Yeah, our commitment is to work on the issues that matter for the American people, beginning with driving down the high cost of living. Life is too expensive. Democrats actually give a damn about the personal expenses of the American people. And clearly, Republicans could care less about the financial circumstances of the American people, as Donald Trump just said. And so we're going to relentlessly focus on making life better for everyday Americans, driving down the high cost of living, and of course, fixing our broken healthcare system, so that everyday Americans can actually afford to go see a doctor when they need one. We need to take down the price of gas and groceries and goods, and we will launch an all-out frontal assault on this broken economy. Because Donald Trump and Republican policies have been a complete and total failure. At the same period of time, what is clear, based on the fact that Republicans have so clearly chosen a strategy of needing to cheat to win. And that can't be normalized. We're not going to let it be normalized. That's nothing to celebrate. That they may get themselves a handful of additional seats to take them from a 3-seat majority to a 6-seat majority. That's nothing to celebrate, and it's not going to immunize them from their failures. That should be clear. Certainly not in an environment where in 2018 we flipped 40 seats. But what is clear to me is that in addition to focusing on the economy, focusing on making life better for the American people, and focusing on driving down the high cost of living, we need massive electoral reform, massive campaign finance reform, and massive judicial reform. And that will also be an important part of what we'll need to do as Democrats in the majority on behalf of the American people in the next Congress.
All right. Shout out to Hakeem Jeffries. Okay, so he was being honest about that. Next up, we got Steven Crowder and Nick Fuentes expose how Trump betrayed Americans. So this was the video when I was saying that there were a lot of crazy comments below it. A lot of people upset with President Trump. The reason why I wanted to bring this video after we watch Hakeem Jeffries is just so you guys can kind of see two people that when this thing started, very pro-Trump, right? Especially Nick Fuentes during Trump's first presidency, right? Not so much during his second, and he's been transparent about that and why, but definitely Steven Crowder, Nick Fuentes, and now if you just listen to the tone of how they're talking. So let's take a look at that.
Men don't do basic hydration. We need super hydration. Old Spice super hydration. Vitamin boost. They're gonna pack the core.
Okay, and by the way, shout out to Purge Viral. My guy Purge Viral is the one who covered this. We always watch him. He's a channel favorite over here. When you guys get a chance, go over to his channel and check out some of his clips. He always has great clips of Nick Fuentes and other people. He covers Nick often, but Steven Crowder, the likes of Nick Fuentes, he does a great job. So shout out to Purge Viral.
And I think that every election, the Republican side basically overstates what the Republicans are doing for us. And then I think they exacerbate or overstate the risk of Democrats. This whole, like, they're going to pack the courts and make Puerto Rico a state. It's like, well, they didn't do that under Biden. I don't think they're going to do that this time. And if you believe that they did, why are we using the nuclear option? If you really thought Democrats were going to break precedent, pack the courts, make Puerto Rico a state, do this and that, okay, then it's life or death. We have to do everything possible. Then use the nuclear option, okay, and pass the SAVE Act so that, we could get all these Democrats off the voter rolls, and so that we could break the logjam on DHS and get them their money and do the deportations. But it's like, Republicans will act like it's life or death, most important election, but then when it comes to nuclear option, they go, oh, we can't do that. Oh, we can't do the deportation. Oh, this is the best we could do. And it's like, okay, so somebody's not telling the truth here. And I don't think it's you, but I think it's like...
I agree with you. There are Republicans who aren't telling the truth. I agree with you. And by the way, they need to be, like, for example, Thune, Cornyn, screw that guy with a wire brush, right? People like that. But we know them by name to throw them all into the same basket, and just, it's a constant dismissal. But I don't really think that their deportations are enough. I don't really think we're a negative migration country. I don't really think that 87% H1 I don't really think just executive order 2 genders. I don't really care downsizing the federal government by hundreds of thousands. I don't really care that housing prices and rent prices are at multi-year lows. Those things don't matter because it's not enough when we know that the Democrats will obviously, and this is their plan. They didn't say they were going to make Puerto Rico a state and pack the court to 13 last time. They're saying that now. What they did say is that they were going to go a different direction on immigration, and we got, by our agreement, 10 to 20 million in 3.5 years. That is unsurvivable. And you're recommending that people take that risk based on then what else? Where do we go? So we vote Democrat, we take the risk, but we cut it off at the pass.
But again, it's like, you can say, well, that's not survivable, but what we got. We got 10 to 20 million illegals. Why? Because Republicans didn't build a wall. And now they're not going out because Republicans won't deport them. So it's like, if Democrats get in, they're going to end the world. That's why we need Republicans to not do anything.
No, you're taking what Democrats did and blaming all Republicans. Most Republicans wanted the wall. We voted, but we can't because there's something known as gridlock. And then you're saying vote for the Democrats who blocked the wall.
But in 17, we had the House, the Senate, the White House, the Supreme Court. Why didn't they use the nuclear option to just build the wall? It's because the Republicans don't really want to build the wall. They want the illegals to come here. And then when the Democrats get in, they can say, oh, shucks, the Democrats brought in all these illegals. So we're going to deport them. Get us elected. Never mind. We only want to deport the violent criminals. Negative migration is good.
See, this is the stuff that it's like, even when Nick Fuentes could get on my nerve, he makes so much sense. It's just like, God, sometimes I hate to hear him talk because he's making sense. And it's like, he's like, so what do we want to do here, right? We want to leave the Republicans in office for what? For them to do nothing? He's like, they're the ones that won't deport them. He's like, okay, they did get in, under Biden, under the Democrats. He's like, but the Democrats were the ones who let them in, so they're not going to deport them. And then, the Republicans are coming and they're saying, we're going to do this. And then next thing you know, it's only dividing the criminals. And then next thing we know, no one's getting deported at all. And I'm just like, oh God. Every time he talks, he makes sense for the most part when he's referring to what the Republican administration currently in office is doing. And it just drives me insane.
Enough. And it's like that's the risk. The risk is that we play this game forever. I want to step outside of it. Break the matrix. We got to run the Trump playbook from 16. Get somebody fresh in. To me, that's the risk.
I don't have a problem getting someone fresh in. I don't have a problem with getting someone fresh in. As a matter of fact, here's the problem. I actually agree with you in principle and the premise of wanting to get someone fresh in. I don't probably have the disdain for Rubio and Vance. Between the two, I probably would choose Rubio because of...
Really?
Well, just because I agree with you that the threat of big tech and AI, and I think that's a very uncozy relationship that worries me, but I don't know. I'm not They're not ideal. But I still would pick them over Kamala Harris or Gavin Newsom. I don't think Gavin Newsom is a Chad. I think Gavin Newsom would be a disaster. I think Gretchen Whitmer would be the worst, but I think they've learned their lesson. They're not going to run abroad, hopefully. She would be the worst thing that could happen to this country, Gretchen Whitmer. But I would like someone else.
Yeah, of course we need someone else. And by the way, can it even be worse than like Trump now? I think that's almost. I think no one of this administration should even be allowed to be elected again. Because look what it did in the past 2 years already. This administration is like the worst.
And to what Purge says, he says he doesn't think anybody in this administration should be reelected. Well, that makes sense, right? That's kind of like what we saw last election, where everyone saw Joe Biden's performance and then they pushed Kamala Harris to the front, and a lot of people were like, oh, hell to the no, because they were like, are you kidding me? We haven't even seen her during this guy's whole term, and he's barely done anything. He hasn't even been awake that much during his term, and now we're going to put in his vice president, who we don't even know where she's been the last 4 years. Oh no, that's not going to happen.
Administration ever. I think it's almost like even worse than like the Biden administration at this point. Like seriously, so no one should be allowed to be elected of this clown administration. Not Rubio, not Vance, none of them. But I agree. We need like a new. We just need like a new person, like someone who's actually America first, and who is not cosplaying, who's not like a puppet of his biggest donors. We just need like a normal person who actually cares about you, who actually cares about me, who cares about his country. Like, is that too much to ask for? It almost looks like it, and that's such a shame. That we always have to choose between like two bad options. Like why? How is it possible we have so many people in this country and somehow we always have to choose between two puppets of like the Israel lobby? Why?
CPS is the flagship of mission at Villanova University.
The problem is your plan guarantees the opposite. Historically, without exception. I'm sure you're aware of this. In other words, you're asking people to take a risk. Well, you're aware of the moderate Republican paradox. This goes all the way back to Goldwater.
Which is...
So it's anytime Republicans lose big, right? Democrats achieve chief power, especially when Republicans go further right. And they lose big. Democrats attain power. The donor class, who you need to reckon with the donor class, right, as part of your prescription, they immediately go to the most moderate candidate who they think is winnable. So, for example, just using some like after Goldwater, they decided to go with a more moderate Nixon. What happened with Ford over Reagan? If you look at what happened after George Bush, McCain, and then you even look at examples like the Tea Party swinging further right, and then I'm going, oh my gosh, we need someone moderate to win the general, Mitt Romney. So what you're doing historically, with pretty much no exception, is guaranteeing the next John McCain or Mitt Romney.
I think you're missing one. I think you're missing a notable exception to that. Yeah.
But Donald Trump was an outsider, was a Democrat his whole life, right? We have to agree it's an outlier. You're talking about operating within the binary. When Republicans lose big, Democrats are so bad, they go, okay, we can't live under this rule. Historically, they go, let's pick the most winnable candidate. So you're going to deal with those donors, hundreds of billions, potentially trillions of dollars, in 2028, with who? With what kind of funding and what kind of ground game? Because I also don't want Mitt Romney. For crying out loud, Mitt Romney.
Rubio. What's it? Here's the thing. Is like if you're saying you're going for Rubio.
I didn't say I'm going for Rubio. I had to pick between the two because I really don't like the Palantir connection. I agree with you, is what I was saying.
But, okay, and fair enough. I don't want to mischaracterize your position. However, you must acknowledge the way it's looking, they're going to consolidate behind one or the other. And right now, it looks like Rubio is the donor choice. The Wall Street donors, the pro-Israel donors, they're taking informal survey. They want Rubio. And to me, it's like, okay, 10 years after Trump defeated Rubio, New American Century, Miriam Adelson's puppet, I think Trump literally said at AIPAC, or the Republican Jewish Coalition, he said, you want Rubio because he's your puppet and he'll do whatever he wants because he takes your money. He's a Florida creature.
He also said Ted Cruz's dad killed JFK. Come on, we know what goes on with primaries with Trump. That one thing I do have to address, he's not an outlier. Republicans won in 2014 before Trump paved the way for him. That's what I'm saying. If they win, you can veer them further right. They also won in 2022. If they win, you can veer them right. That's what paved the way for Trump. So it actually proves the point. If Republicans lose, you guaranteed historically paved the way for a moderate Republican. It doesn't go the other way. So I'm asking you, and that's what I don't want. That's a big fear of mine, by the way. I'm not all in on Rubio or Vance, but I would like to not see someone worse, to not see someone more moderate, to not see a Romney or McCain. That's what we'd be looking at if there's a big Democrat win. You just made my point with Trump, right? He was able to because of 2014 Republican. He probably wouldn't have been able to if you were looking at a Republican loss. It would have been like Goldwater. It would have been like McCain.
But you had a Democrat incumbent, or a Democrat leaving office, which was Obama. Here's the dynamic, the way that I see it, is that Democrats win in 2026, and they're going to sabotage this administration because they're going to impeach Trump. They're going to investigate everybody, and they're going to find embezzlement, corruption. Like there's some problems in this administration, or at least there's a lot of smoke, let's say, around Howard Lutnick and some of the crypto stuff. And there's a lot that I would even like to see investigated. And so everybody in the administration is going to be hurt by this, Rubio and Vance included. That weakens them ahead of the primary. They are toxically associated to the administration, which is failing more under Democrats. Then to me, that provides an opening for somebody fresh from the outside that's...
And we know, like, so I can see where Nick is coming from with this, because we know that when Democrats do get in office, when the Republicans lose in 2026 and they flip all of those seats, we already know that that's going to happen. Like, we've seen a couple of people on live stream here react to that, and they're like, yeah, the minute that this happens, it's a wrap. Like, we're going to see impeachment. And they're going to go after them, absolutely. A lot of things are going to be investigated. I do believe that they will find some type of fraud, because you've even had them interviewing some younger guys from Doge, and they've asked them on camera, on the record, like, have you guys actually cut the deficit? Have you been successful in what you've done? And they've just flat out said no. So I do believe that it's going to be problematic, and it is going to then at that point pave the way for an interesting type of Democrat, which is why I keep talking about Gavin Newsom at all. Right, that's why when Steven Crowder mentioned something about not wanting to vote for Gavin Newsom, Nick kind of just smiled there, and Steven Crowder said, "I don't believe that Gavin Newsom chads, or I don't believe that he mogs." And I'm thinking to myself, like, you have the likes of Nick has said this, Clavicular has said this. These are younger guys that have massive followings, or let's just say decent number of followings. Right, they have attention on them, and if they can justify why they would vote for these guys. And in 2026, we're going to see all these seats flip, and then we're going to see all these impeachment. Yeah, like Nick is saying, Vance and Marco are going to be weakened right before the primaries. And in that case, ushering in a Gavin Newsom at that point doesn't look so bad. That's why I'm like, God, just to hear Nick talk sometimes drives me crazy.
As I'm sort of repudiating Trump's legacy, or maybe even I have some allegiance to Trump's original message in 2016. Maybe I'm going to save Trumpism from itself or where it went astray. That's kind of, I don't think we need to get into like Barry Goldwater. That's how I see it. If Republicans are... If Trump is strong going into 28, then his people are strong. They have a better chance of winning the primary, and there's big consolidation. If they're weak, then people are going, I don't know, Rubio and Vance are toxic, they're tied to Trump, they're unpopular, maybe we need something else. So I think that's the dynamic. I mean, do you disagree, and why?
Okay, like I can understand where Nick is coming from, but to be honest, this is not the best way, right? Because also, like, it doesn't make any sense at all. Take a look at Trump, for example. Like, he won the last elections big time. He even won the popular vote, and he still didn't do anything. He was like a very strong candidate. But look how he betrayed us. So, like, do you need more examples than, like, Trump himself problems? Thing. It's just sort of people will be like, all right, I'm going to vote for them because they're going to make a real difference. And every time when they're like elected, they don't do anything anymore. They don't listen to these people anymore. So it's just like one big movie almost. I think we need like a third party. I'm so tired of like these two parties who are always cosplaying and acting like they are so different. Meanwhile, they're almost like exactly the same. They just give us, the people, they just...
The viral Pillow Belly beads are on sale right now. You can get 30 bead sticks for $36.
Make us feel that we have still an option to choose from, but at the end it will always be the same. It will never be America first. It will always be Israel first. It will never be a golden age for us. It will always be a golden age for almost everyone else in the world, no matter what party you vote for. So I really believe we need a third party, because the person is not going to make a difference. It's the party. The party is the problem. The political system is the problem. And always, this is exactly where it goes wrong. We're always hoping for like another person that he's actually going to help our country. actually going to make America great again. Look at Trump. Look at Trump, how he betrayed us. Everyone thought that he was going to be the guy who actually was going to do all these kind of things, and he did nothing. He did nothing. So it's not the people, it's the parties, they are the problems. As long as we have the two same parties over and over again, we can play the same game and it will never ever change anything. I hope you get the point I'm trying to make, but that's very important. It's not the people who are important, it's the party.
Well, if he's strong, then that's just the country's in a good place.
Yeah, I do. In a better place, certainly.
With Democrats.
Right. No. If Trump is strong,
we're saying it's strong going into 28 after people vote Democrat.
No. If Trump is strong, if Democrats don't win big and they're not able to sabotage him,
okay,
they'll be stronger than they would have been otherwise.
So wait, are you still saying he would be strong because people vote Democrat?
No, I'm saying he's stronger if Democrats don't win.
Right, the midterms.
Right.
Yeah. Okay. So how does that play into your plan? Forgive me, I couldn't have a timeline there where I was confused. I was assuming that we were going along with the plan and Democrats get voted in 2026.
Yeah, Democrats get voted in 2026, and they weaken Trump. Trump is weaker, and by association, everybody else is weaker. Rubio, Vance. Because again, they're going to dredge up all this stuff, and you're not going to be able to run from that because they're going to haul people before the House. They're going to impeach people. It's going to get ugly, and I want them to bring because this administration's a failure. It's an utter betrayal. And I don't think maybe. I don't want to say you won't acknowledge. I think you disagree. But they promised mass deportations, and that's not happening. They promised no new wars, and we got a war with Iran. Like, they stabbed us in the back.
So we got things there, and I think this is important. We did get it. If you want to predicate it on Democrat numbers that we don't have deportations or enough, but at least we have some versus mass importations. And I certainly would say if you look at the matter of record that even from left-leaning think tanks, institutes, that we are seeing record deportations, we have a negative migration trend. Trey never thought would.
I think that's interesting that Steven Crowder goes that route. And he says, I think it's better that we have some instead of none. And I'm thinking to myself, like, some. The little bit that we have in comparison to what was let in, it's minuscule. Like, that number's a joke. It's like a spit in a bucket. But he literally says we have some rather than none. I might agree with him there if we didn't have so many let in, but at that point, at the rate that we had the illegals let in, I'm like, that's insane compared to like the deportation numbers we have.
What happened in our lifetime? Nobody actually disputes that except for you. Okay. I don't think that's a betrayal.
I do think the betrayal is saying that you don't care about immigration, which you said. And that's why I need to know, like, do these things matter? Do these things matter to you? Does immigration matter? Yeah, does immigration actually matter? Because people who care about immigration certainly see this administration as the biggest wins of our lifetime ever in contrast to Biden.
You're wrong about that, and I'll tell you why. Because there are people in DHS. The people in DHS, I talk to people in the administration, I'm sure you do as well. The morale is low.
I actually really don't. You're probably more welcome than I am, surprising as it is. We're more congenial.
I'm pretty congenial guy. Yeah. Thank you. I'm more friendly. No, you're a good guy, Steven. We can get along, but in DHS, the morale is super low. They're literally going and telling people
it's low because of sanctuary cities and people fucking cutting out their taillights and being hamstrung. Like you're sidestepping people creating sanctuary cities. The left will not deport violent felons in our prison system. And you're telling people to vote for them.
It's always these excuses like Republicans are going to give us deportations. Well, no, we can't because sanctuary cities and
they still are in spite of it. Donald Trump gave us an 87% reduction, which you ran billboards. Give me this.
Are we talking about H-1Bs or illegals right now?
Both. Because you said last time on the show you said, well, who cares about illegal immigration? You accepted the premise because if they're replacing you legally, and you run billboards on that, and it's the single biggest strides that have ever been made in our lifetime. You're like, I don't know. That sounds to me like an excuse, Nick.
They said mass deportations, not negative migration. They said mass deportations, largest deportation in history. And by the way, there's people in DHS. They're reaching out to this mass deportations project, this mass deportation coalition, because Trump is holding it back. Trump has been convinced by Brooke Rollins that we can't deport people from farms. And he's being convinced by Wall Street that we can't deport a lot of people in general from the labor force because it's going to put upward pressure on prices. It's going to hurt the economy. So it's like, let's be honest, Trump is the problem. Trump is slowing down deportations. He doesn't want them. Like, they're betraying us. They could do more. They're choosing not to. They walked it back like 100 times in the past few months. They went to the Trump Doral for their congressional retreat, and the deputy chief of staff said, don't say mass deportations, that's done. Susie Wiles and the rest of them said it's a course correction, we're shifting gears, we're changing the strategy, we're focusing on violent offenders, violent criminals. There's all this consternation in the White House saying, Trump is being convinced to approve all these seasonal farm workers. He's being convinced not to do the deportations, only focus on criminals, which, by the way, that's kind of like what Biden was doing, picking people up at prisons that murdered people.
Wherever your journey takes you, get there in iconic style in a new Jeep Wrangler. Rugged and timeless.
That's been going on. That's an Obama policy, but go ahead.
Yeah, sorry. Because we both, by the way, have a tendency to kind of, I think your brain works the same way I do. And this bullshit. And I don't know about you, but it's in my personal life, too. I'll come home to my lady. But this bullshit. She's like, okay, it's kind of like the old man. Put him down, like, go grab a drink and come down and play some games. So I wanted to deal with those kind of separately. I understand what you're saying. But you are making the same mistake that the left makes quite often. And what I mean by that is pointing to rhetoric as opposed to policy. So you say, okay, let's assume, although I just don't agree, there are no record deportations. There are in comparison to Obama, to Clinton, certainly to Biden. We certainly would have to agree on that because they counted border turnaways. But negative migration. Okay, that doesn't matter. You're pointing to the rhetoric. Okay, H-1Bs, that doesn't matter because you're pointing to the rhetoric. You also have to look at other numbers, like, for example, the job growth under Biden entirely to foreign-born workers. These numbers also don't lie. Net negative for native-born Americans, and it has flipped precisely under Donald Trump. That is important for particularly young Americans who you have as an audience, right? We have a youth unemployment that I think we would both agree is directly affected by H-1Bs, cheap labor, illegal immigration. It's bad here. It's worse anywhere the left has power. You're talking about 20% across Europe. You're talking about 15% in Canada. Those numbers also don't lie. Okay, Joe Biden, no Americans hired post-COVID. Only foreign-born workers. First year Donald Trump switched. Foreign-born workers, their jobs go down, job losses, growth for native-born Americans. That in combination does become undeniable in saying these aren't mild differences. This is a major difference. And rhetoric, you know, and having to deal with the media, but going after violent criminals first. Tom Holmoe's on the show. I guess that would be one of the administration. He's someone we've had on the show a couple times. He just says, of course, we're going after violent criminals, but what are we going to do if we're from not violent? We're going to report them. They can't be here, that's our job. We're going to report them too. In other words, it gives them some leeway and the numbers bear that out.
I don't even know if this is true, and I don't even believe this, to be honest. And by the way, isn't it like kind of ironic that you're Trump yourself, you're campaigning with like mass deportations, we're going to build a wall, but almost all of your real estate is like built by illegal aliens, by illegal immigrants. The Trump Tower is built by Mexicans. He wants to deport them, of course. Now, do you really think that like the biggest donors that they want to like deport all these people? No, because then no one is going to work for their companies as well. So it's just so stupid. And like, isn't it kind of weird? Like ICE, they never released any like numbers anymore. Like, why are they not releasing numbers anymore? Like how many people they deported? Because they probably don't even deport a lot.
Yeah, and there's something to that. This is why people like Nick, they have the leeway that they have, and they're gaining the traction, and they have been that they are, because that, in fact, is true. They're not releasing numbers the way they were at one point. I think after we saw Kristi Noem get fired, we saw a drastic change in the reporting of numbers or just commercials that she kind of got in trouble for as far as budget and things like that. So, yeah, I believe that there's probably some happening, but not in the numbers that President Trump campaigned on. That's the way that I believe that's going down.
A lot of people. And Trump knows this. Trump is just, again, this shows you that he's just a liar because he's saying all these kind of things because the majority of the people who voted for Trump, who voted for the GOP, yeah, of course, they want to see mass deportations. They want the wall, but
stop using Wi-Fi doorbells. When the internet goes out, they become useless because once it's down, you can't see anything anymore.
Trump doesn't want this, and he's just like cosplaying, he's just like acting again, that he really thinks that this is also important, but he knows exactly what is going on. He knows that like is not deporting any people at all, and he's okay with it. He's okay with it. And like, don't get me wrong. I also wish that many of these jobs went to like Americans instead of all these illegal immigrants who only come here to work. But it's a little bit unfair to hold them accountable because they're not even like the real problem. The real problem are like these big companies, and Trump knows them, even like Trump's own company. They're responsible for all these people coming in because they love the cheap labor. So it's so unfair that they're now saying, for example, Trump as well, America first, but at the same time, his company like rather hires like cheap labor from like another country instead of like real Americans because they're too expensive. Like, do you see like how stupid this is? And that's with many of these big companies, and all these companies, they give a lot of money to Trump, they give a lot of money to the GOP because they know they don't want to have mass deportations because then they have no one working for the companies anymore, and that's not something what they want. So they're cosplaying like Trump is saying, we want mass deportations, we're deporting a lot of people, but at the same time he has a lot of powerful people like whispering in his ear, you should stop doing that, you should stop doing that, it has been enough now. That's literally how it goes. The people want to have mass deportations, but the biggest donors, they don't want this, and then I can tell you already who is going to win this battle. It's not the people.
It's not even close, Nick.
But here's the thing. I mean, you can say it's better than Obama, but we've been fighting for 10 years for all of this, for like, we're deporting more people than Obama after they let in 20 million people. No, we voted for mass deportations. We're not even getting a million a year. ICE won't release the numbers because they're embarrassingly low. That's why we have to rely on like census data to extrapolate it and get, well, this a million people self-deported. You know, that's what they promised. And by the way, you're saying it's all rhetoric. Let's look at the policy. After they withdrew from Minneapolis, they said we're done doing raids. They were doing these big operations in Chicago, New York, Minneapolis, where they surged thousands of CBP and ICE into the city. And what they would do is patrols. They would have ICE out on the street, basically looking for illegals, going door to door. What they've done since then is they put body cams on them. They stopped doing these big surges. They stopped doing the patrols and the big raids. And what they've effectively shifted over to, like in New York, for example, is they're only going to go to the prisons. If someone gets arrested for murder, they go to prison, they're not legal, then ICE picks them up. And that's really all that is happening right now. If you wanted mass deportations, what would that look like? Home Depots, farms, meat processing plants, the Hyundai facilities. But what happens when those places get raided? Trump gets a call. He gets a call from Wall Street, he gets a call from Hyundai, he gets a call from Brooke Rollins, and they say, stop deporting our farmers, stop deporting our Hyundai employees, stop deporting. And so Trump is effectively protecting our illegal immigrant workforce. They could deport them. They're choosing not to. The numbers could be higher. They could be doing raids. They stopped doing them. And they stopped doing them, they say, because of politics. We'll lose the midterms. All this stuff. And I'm just saying, it could be better. It really could be. They're choosing not to.
It could be better. It could always be better.
No, it could be much better.
Okay, let's say it could be much better. It's funny that you use a meat processing plant because we saw the exact example in Omaha, Nebraska, where there were Americans lined up when a bunch of people had been raided and took
them to court. Then they shut it down. And that's what they do too.
So are you saying that there's an equivalency? In other words, it's not that big of a difference as far as immigration?
Yeah, I think it's not meaningful at all. No, that's getting back to.
And what about, let's go through, what about H1B? 87%? It's not 100. 87% in new ones. The workplace is that significant?
No, I don't think so. It needs to go on time. There needs to be no H1Bs.
Okay, so 87% reduction is nothing, so we'll go with the party that increases them by 200%.
They hit the cap. They hit the cap every year. And by the way, we're going to get more. I mean, Elon Musk and Little Tech are lobbying this administration. So
87%. 99% border crossing reduction, not significant?
No, there's no wall.
We did that in 2020, and then we got 10
more.
million.
We're building a wall now. The wall was stopped again after the midterms. They encourage people to sit out in the Senate.
How much you want to bet? How much you want to bet?
About 50. It's like over 50 miles. Is that what the wall is? Over 50 miles, and there's another 17 miles of secondary wall.
The border 2,000 miles.
Yeah, we built how many hundreds of miles in the first term, and how many times was it being gridlocked by the Democrats who you say people should vote for?
60 miles of new wall. There's 400 miles of replacement, 50, 60 miles of new wall out of 2,000.
How many was in the first term we're talking? Right. Then now we have another 50 plus, is it called 75?
The first term was 60 new, and this second term, I'll take your word for it, I haven't looked at it, but if it's 70, I mean, then you got a grand total of 130 miles of new wall.
Okay.
5%.
And how many were built under Democrats? And how much of that was we control versus Democrats?
That's crazy.
We need more. But the point is there will be no wall. Wait, you notice
it's a wall.
So let's vote for the part.
Crazy because he's saying the way Steven Crowder is saying it. I was gonna say, well, at this point, I have to agree with Nick. If it's out of 2,000, we've only built about 113 miles, 120 miles of wall. There is no wall. I mean, physically, there is some wall, but there is no wall. I mean, out of 2,000 miles, really, we're talking about 116, 120. What are we even talking about here? There is no wall. So that's why I can see why Nick is kind of pushing back on this. And he's like, Steven, we actually need a wall.
Go ahead. Okay.
Sorry, you go ahead.
No, and I understand this, right? I guess we're dealing with